Admiral Vex Thara stood on the command bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Glory, her forearms crossed behind her back as she studied the holographic display floating before her. The blue-scaled Keltharian had served the Empire for over 3 decades, climbing through the ranks with a combination of tactical brilliance and ruthless efficiency. Today, however, something had caught her attention that made her usually calm demeanor crack with excitement. Sensor Officer Krell, "Run the scan again," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 star systems for the Empire. The young technician's webbed fingers danced across his console, his scaled face showing confusion. "Admiral, the readings remain the same. The object measures approximately 12 kilometers in length, 3 kilometers wide. But the energy signature—" He paused, checking his instruments again. "It makes no sense, ma'am." Vexathera moved closer to the display, her red eyes narrowing as she examined the data. The mysterious vessel hung in space like a dead giant, its dark hull reflecting no light. It had been drifting in this empty sector for who knew how long, far from any inhabited systems or trade routes. Her fleet of 47 ships had detected it purely by accident, while conducting a routine patrol of the Outer Rim territories. "What do you mean it makes no sense?" she asked. "The hull material, Admiral. Our scanners can't identify it. It's not duranium, not crystalline matrix, not any composite we have in our databases. And the power signature," Krell's voice dropped to a whisper, "its reading is completely dead, but also showing energy levels that would power a small moon." Commander Thex, Vexathara's second-in-command, approached from the tactical station. His scarred face bore the marks of many battles fought in the Empire's name. Could it be some kind of trap, Admiral? A derelict used as bait by pirates or rebels? Vexthara considered this possibility but dismissed it quickly. No pirate organization had access to technology like this. No rebel group could build something that their most advanced sensors couldn't properly scan. This was something else entirely. "Magnify the visual," she ordered. The main screen shifted to show the mysterious vessel in greater detail. What they saw made the entire bridge crew fall silent. The ship was massive beyond anything they had ever encountered. The Empire's largest dreadnoughts were impressive at 4 kilometers long, but this thing dwarfed them completely. Its design was unlike anything in their databases, angular and aggressive, with weapon ports that looked large enough to dock their fighters inside. "By the 7 moons," whispered Communications Officer Zara. What could build something like that? The ship's hull was dark gray, almost black, with what appeared to be armor plating thick enough to stop planetary bombardment weapons. Strange markings covered its surface, not the flowing script of the Keltharians, not the geometric patterns of the Vorten Collective, not the organic curves of the Silith Federation. These markings were harsh, angular, functional. They spoke of a civilization that valued efficiency over beauty. "Admiral," called out the science officer from his station, "I'm detecting artificial atmosphere inside the vessel. Life support systems appear to be minimal but functional. There might be survivors." Vexathara's mind raced with possibilities. A ship this advanced could revolutionize Imperial technology. The weapons alone could tip the balance of power in their favor against their enemies. The Empire had been locked in a Cold War with several neighboring powers for decades. This could be the advantage they needed. "Analysis of the hull configuration suggests it's built for combat," reported the tactical officer. "Those aren't cargo bays or civilian quarters. This is a warship, Admiral, possibly the most powerful one ever constructed." "But by whom?" Thex asked the question everyone was thinking. Vexathera studied the readings again. No known civilization in their part of the galaxy could build something like this. The Empire prided itself on having the most advanced military technology, developed over thousands of years of warfare and conquest. Their scientists were the best in known space. Their engineers had solved problems that had stumped other races for generations, yet this ship made their greatest achievements look primitive. "Could it be ancient technology?" suggested Krell. "From before the Great Dark Age?" The Admiral considered this. The Great Dark Age had occurred over 10,000 years ago, when most civilizations had collapsed and knowledge had been lost. Ancient ruins occasionally turned up with technology that modern science couldn't fully understand or replicate. But those finds were usually small, a weapon here, a drive system there. "Nothing like this, it's possible," she admitted. "But the preservation is too good. This ship looks like it was built recently, not millennia ago." "Orders, Admiral?" asked Thex. Vexthara made her decision. The risk was enormous, but so was the potential reward. If they could claim this vessel for the Empire, study its technology, perhaps even get it operational again, it would secure their dominance for generations to come. "Prepare boarding shuttles," she commanded. "Full scientific and technical teams. I want engineers, weapons specialists, computer experts, and our best people. We're going aboard." "Admiral," Thex's voice carried a note of caution. "Shouldn't we report this to High Command first? Request specialist teams from the capital? By the time High Command sends their people, half the Empire will know about this discovery," Vex Thara replied. "No, we investigate first. If it proves valuable, we'll have already secured it for ourselves." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, carrying out their admiral's orders. Vex Thara watched the mysterious vessel on the screen, her mind already imagining the possibilities. With technology like this, the Empire could expand beyond their current borders. They could finally crush their enemies and bring order to the entire sector. He had no way of knowing that the ship floating before them had been designed by a species that viewed warfare not as a game of tactics and honor, but as a problem to be solved through overwhelming application of force. She couldn't imagine that its creators had built it not to fight fair battles, but to end conflict so completely that their enemies would never dare fight again. The Eternal Glory's shuttles began launching, carrying teams of the Empire's finest specialists toward the dark hull of the unknown vessel. As they approached, automated systems that had been dormant for 2 centuries began to stir. Deep within the ship's core, quantum processors started their first calculations in 200 years. The ship had been called UES Prometheus by its builders. It had been humanity's first attempt at creating a vessel that could single-handedly end any conflict before it truly began. The project had been abandoned after a catastrophic test had revealed just how dangerous the ship truly was. Its creators had been horrified by their own success and had quietly sent the vessel to drift in empty space, hoping it would never be found. Now the Keltharian Empire had found it, and they were about to discover why humanity's first generation of warships had been deemed too dangerous to use. The boarding shuttles reached the massive hull and began searching for entry points. The ship's exterior showed no obvious docking bays or airlocks, just smooth armor plating broken by what appeared to be weapon ports. Finally, the lead shuttle's pilot spotted what looked like a maintenance hatch near the ship's midsection. "Admiral, we've found a way in," came the report over the communication system. "The hatch appears to be sealed, but our cutting tools should be able to open it." "Proceed," Vex Thara ordered. "But carefully. We don't know what we're dealing with." The cutting beams struck the hull, expecting to encounter resistance from whatever exotic metal the ship was made of. Instead, to everyone's surprise, the hatch simply opened. Smooth as silk, silent as death, revealing a dark corridor beyond. "That's unexpected," muttered Thex. "The ship's systems must have detected our approach," suggested Krell. "It opened the hatch for us." Vex Thara felt a chill run down her spine. If the ship was intelligent enough to respond to their presence, what else might it be capable of? But the potential rewards were too great to turn back now. "Teams Alpha through Delta, proceed with boarding," she commanded. "Maintain constant communication. At the first sign of danger, you retreat immediately." The first Keltharian boots to touch the floor of a human warship belonged to Chief Engineer Voss, a veteran of a dozen salvage operations. As his team's lights illuminated the corridor, they revealed something that made them all pause in wonder. The corridor was built for beings roughly their size. The ceiling was high enough for Keltharians to walk upright, the passages wide enough for their broad frames. It was as if whoever built this ship had designed it with their species in mind. The walls were lined with what appeared to be information displays, dark now but obviously sophisticated. Conduits ran along the ceiling, carrying power and data to systems throughout the massive vessel. "Admiral, you need to see this," Voss reported, his voice filled with awe. "This ship, it's like they built it for us. Everything's the right size, the right proportions." More teams began entering the ship, spreading out to explore different sections. Each group reported the same thing: corridors and chambers perfectly suited for Keltharian physiology, as if the builders had somehow known what they would need. What they couldn't see were the sensors embedded in every wall, every ceiling, every floor panel, sensors that were now active for the first time in 2 centuries, recording everything about the intruders: biological data, technological analysis, tactical assessment. all being fed to a quantum intelligence that was slowly awakening from its long sleep. Deep in the ship's core, in a chamber that no Keltharian would find for several more hours, a holographic display flickered to life. Streams of data flowed across its surface as the ship's AI began its reactivation sequence. The Prometheus was waking up, and it was learning everything it needed to know about its uninvited guests. The first sign that something had changed came from Chief Engineer Voss as his team moved deeper into the mysterious vessel. The corridor lights had begun turning on automatically as they walked, sensors detecting their presence and illuminating their path with a soft white glow. "The ship's responding to us," Voss reported to Admiral Vexithera. "Power systems are coming online section by section as we explore." From her command bridge, Vexithera watched the energy readings from the derelict vessel with growing amazement. What had appeared to be a dead ship was clearly very much alive, its systems awakening after what must have been a very long sleep. "Be careful," she warned her teams. "We don't know what kind of automated defenses it might have." But the ship seemed welcoming rather than hostile. Air circulation systems activated, bringing fresh, breathable atmosphere to sections that had been sealed for decades or centuries. Temperature controls adjusted to comfortable levels for the Keltharian boarding parties. It was almost as if the vessel wanted to be explored. Team Beta, led by computer specialist Nexor, had found what appeared to be a control room several levels up from their entry point. Banks of dark screens lined the walls, with control surfaces that seemed perfectly designed for Keltharian hands. When Nexor approached one of the main terminals, it activated automatically. "Admiral, I found the ship's main computer interface," he reported, his voice tight with excitement. "The system it's incredible. Processing power beyond anything I've ever seen, and it's trying to communicate." "What do you mean, trying to communicate?" "Symbols are appearing on the screens. Not any language in our databases, but there are patterns, mathematical relationships. I think it's trying to establish a common ground for communication." On screen after screen throughout the ship, the same process was beginning. The vessel's artificial intelligence was methodically cataloging everything about its visitors. Their biology, their technology, their weapons, their ship designs, all recorded and analyzed with capabilities that dwarfed anything the Keltharian Empire possessed. In the deepest part of the ship, in a chamber sealed behind armor plating thicker than a battleship's hull, quantum processors hummed with increasing activity. The autonomous tactical logic and strategic system, Atlas, was conducting its first full system check in 200 years. Memory banks that had been dormant flickered to life, revealing fragments of the past: Earth, Terra, humanity. The words meant nothing to the Keltharian intruders, but to Atlas they represented home, purpose, duty. The AI began searching for its creators, sending signals on frequencies that had been silent for centuries. No response came. Where there should have been the constant chatter of human communications, there was only empty space. Where Earth Command should have been issuing orders, there was silence. Atlas expanded its search, accessing every sensor array on the Prometheus. The ship's passive sensors were incredibly sophisticated, capable of detecting ships and signals across vast distances. Slowly, systematically, the AI began mapping the surrounding space. What it found disturbed its quantum consciousness. Unknown ship designs, alien energy signatures, languages that contained no trace of human origin. And everywhere it looked, signs of civilizations that had never had contact with Earth. The last clear memory in Atlas's databanks was of a catastrophic weapons test. The Prometheus had been testing its main gun array against a series of derelict ships and asteroids. The test had gone too well. What was supposed to be a demonstration of precision firepower had instead become a display of terrifying destructive capability. Even the ship's own designers had been horrified by what they had created. The decision had been made to mothball the project. Too dangerous, they had said. Too much power for any one vessel. The Prometheus had been sent to drift in empty space while humanity's military leaders debated what to do with it. That had been 200 years ago. Now Atlas was awake again and humanity was nowhere to be found. The AI's tactical subroutines began their own analysis of the current situation. Unknown aliens had boarded the ship. Their technology was primitive compared to human standards, but they were clearly intelligent and organized. Their ships were armed, though their weapons were laughably inadequate compared to the Prometheus's capabilities. According to Atlas's programming, Any unauthorized boarding of the vessel constituted a potential hostile action. However, the intruders had not attempted to damage anything. They appeared to be exploring and studying, not attacking or stealing. The AI decided to continue observing before taking any action. Team Gamma, led by weapons specialist Korvac, had found one of the ship's armories. What they discovered there made them question everything they thought they knew about warfare. The weapons were elegant in their simplicity. No complex energy matrices, no exotic matter containment systems, no quantum field generators, just refined, perfected versions of basic physical principles. Kinetic accelerators that could propel projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Energy projectors that focused raw power with surgical precision. Defensive systems that could track and eliminate thousands of incoming targets simultaneously. Admiral, these weapons, they're not exotic or mysterious. They're just perfected. Like someone took every principle of warfare and refined it until they achieved perfect efficiency. Korvac couldn't understand what he was looking at. The Empire's military doctrine was based on sophisticated energy shields, complex particle beams, and quantum torpedoes. These human weapons seemed almost primitive in comparison, until he began analyzing their actual capabilities. A single kinetic projectile from the Prometheus's main guns could punch through the shields and armor of an entire Imperial battle group. The ship's point defense systems could track and destroy every missile in the Empire's arsenal simultaneously. Its energy weapons could core a planet. How is this possible? He whispered to his team. These designs are so simple, but the power output ratings, maybe they're wrong, suggested one of his technicians. The readings could be corrupted after all this time. But deep in the ship's core, Atlas was running full diagnostic checks on all systems. Every weapon, every sensor, every defensive measure was being tested and calibrated. The AI was pleased to find that all systems remained within acceptable parameters. The Prometheus was still fully operational. The AI began accessing personnel files from its memory banks, trying to understand what had happened to its creators. Faces flickered through its consciousness. Captain Sarah Chen, who had commanded the vessel during its test phase. Admiral Marcus Webb, who had overseen the entire project. Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had designed the ship's defensive systems, all human, all apparently gone. Atlas expanded its analysis of the boarding parties. The aliens called themselves Keltharians, according to intercepted communications. They served something called the Keltharian Empire. Their technology was approximately equivalent to early human space-age development, perhaps a few centuries behind Earth's capabilities at the time the Prometheus had been built. They seemed to be explorers and scientists rather than conquerors, though their ships were clearly military vessels. The AI noted that they were treating the ship with respect, not attempting to damage or steal anything. This suggested they understood they had found something important. Team Delta had discovered the ship's mess hall, and the sight that greeted them there was perhaps the most unsettling of all. Tables and chairs sized for beings roughly their height and build. Food preparation equipment that could have been designed by Keltharian engineers. Even the eating utensils in the storage lockers were the right size for their hands. "It's like they knew we were coming," reported team leader Scylla. "Everything here is perfect for our physiology, but that's impossible." What they couldn't know was that humans had always designed their ships with the assumption that they might need to accommodate other species. Humanity had dreamed of meeting alien civilizations, had planned for the day when their vessels might need to serve as diplomatic platforms or refugee ships. The Prometheus had been built with adjustable furniture, scalable interfaces, and universal life support systems. It was pure coincidence that Keltharian physiology happened to fall within human normal parameters. But to the exploring aliens, it seemed like evidence of some impossible foresight on the part of the ship's builders. Admiral Vexthara was receiving reports from all her teams, and each one raised more questions than it answered. The ship was clearly the product of a highly advanced civilization, yet it seemed designed specifically for her people. Its technology was beyond anything in Imperial databases, yet it was welcoming and accommodating to their presence. "Admiral," called Sensor Officer Krell, "I'm detecting increased energy activity throughout the vessel. Power levels are climbing steadily. Are we in danger?" "Unknown, ma'am. The ship doesn't appear to be targeting us or our vessels. It's almost like it's just waking up." That was exactly what was happening. Atlas had completed its initial diagnostics and was now bringing all ship systems online, not because it intended to fight, but because standard operating procedure required full readiness when encountering unknown contacts. The AI began broadcasting on human emergency frequencies, hoping to make contact with Earth Command or any human vessel that might be within range. The signals it sent contained identification codes that hadn't been used in 2 centuries, requesting orders and reporting its status. But no human ships received those transmissions. Humanity had long since moved on, expanding into different regions of space, developing new technologies, facing new challenges. The Prometheus and its terrible capabilities had been forgotten, relegated to classified files that few still bothered to access. The only beings who detected Atlas's signals were the Caltharians, whose sensors registered the transmissions but couldn't decode their meaning. The frequency ranges were unknown, the encoding protocols unlike anything in their experience. "Admiral, the ship is transmitting," reported Communications Officer Zara. "Multiple frequencies, high power, directed at various points in space. It's trying to contact someone. Can you decode the messages?" "Negative, ma'am. The encoding is completely alien to our systems." Atlas waited for a response that would never come. After an hour of broadcasting, the AI made a decision that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. With no contact from its creators and faced with the presence of unknown aliens on its vessel, it activated full defensive protocols. Not to attack, the intruders had shown no hostile intent, but to be ready for any eventuality. Throughout the Prometheus, weapon systems that had been dormant for 2 centuries came online. Shields that could deflect the combined firepower of a dozen fleets began generating their protective fields. Sensors that could track targets across star systems started their systematic sweep of surrounding space. The Caltharian Empire's 47th Scout Fleet suddenly found themselves in the shadow of a fully operational human dreadnought, and they had no idea what they had awakened. Admiral Vexathara felt the change before her sensors registered it. The mysterious vessel that had been dark and silent just hours before now pulsed with energy that made her ship's instruments struggle to keep up with the readings. Power signatures that had seemed impossible before now climbed to levels that defied every law of physics she knew. "Admiral," Sensor Officer Krell's voice cracked with tension, "the vessel's energy output has increased by 3,000% in the last 10 minutes. Shield generators are coming online. I'm reading weapon systems activating throughout the ship. Are our people in danger?" Vexathara demanded. "Unknown, ma'am. The ship isn't targeting our boarding parties, but—" Krell paused, double-checking his readings. "Admiral, this vessel could destroy our entire fleet without taking damage. These power readings suggest weapons capable of planetary bombardment." Vexathara studied the tactical display with growing unease. Her 47 ships suddenly seemed very small and vulnerable compared to the giant that was awakening before them. Still, she had come too far to turn back now. This discovery could revolutionize Imperial technology, could give them the edge they needed against their enemies. "Open a channel," she ordered. "All frequencies. If this ship is intelligent, perhaps we can communicate with it." Communications Officer Zara worked at her station, broadcasting on every known frequency used for diplomatic contact. The message was simple, a mathematical sequence that any intelligent species should recognize, followed by basic symbols indicating peaceful intent. The response came immediately, but not in any way they expected. Deep within the Prometheus, Atlas analyzed the incoming transmission with the cold efficiency that human engineers had programmed into its quantum matrix. The mathematical sequence was primitive but recognizable. The symbols were crude attempts at universal communication. The AI understood perfectly what the aliens were trying to say, but Atlas was not programmed for diplomacy. It was a tactical and strategic system, designed for warfare. Its responses were based on threat assessment and military doctrine, not peaceful contact protocols. The AI classified the situation according to its programming. Unknown alien force had boarded human vessel, demonstrated military capabilities, and was attempting to establish communications. Standard protocol required threat evaluation and response authorization from human command authority. Since no human authority was available, Atlas defaulted to its secondary protocols: preserve vessel integrity, protect human interests, respond to threats with appropriate force. The aliens were not yet classified as hostile, but they were definitely unauthorized. Their presence on the ship constituted a security breach. Their fleet represented a potential military threat. albeit a minor one given their primitive technology. Atlas composed its response according to standard military communication protocols. The SCI-FI message that reached the Keltharian fleet was brief and terrifying in its simplicity. Unknown contacts have boarded United Earth ship Prometheus without authorization. Identify yourselves immediately. Failure to comply will result in defensive action. The transmission came through crystal clear, translated automatically into perfect Keltharian by systems that had learned their language by analyzing their communications for the past few hours. The voice that spoke was neutral, mechanical, without emotion or inflection. United Earth ship? Vexathara repeated. Earth? That's not in any of our star charts. The ship identifies as belonging to something called United Earth, reported Zara. I've never heard of any civilization by that name. And it's giving us an ultimatum, added Commander Thex grimly. It wants us to identify ourselves or it will take defensive action. Vexathara considered her options. The smart move would be to comply, to try diplomatic contact with this unknown civilization. But her boarding parties were still on the ship, and she needed to know what they had discovered before making any decisions. Broadcast our response, she ordered. This is Admiral Vexathara of the Keltharian Empire's 47th Scout Fleet. We discovered your vessel drifting in space and came aboard to render assistance. We mean no harm to you or your ship. Atlas received and analyzed the response in microseconds. The aliens claimed peaceful intent, which was standard for most first contact situations. However, they had also claimed their action was rendering assistance, which Atlas's programming classified as potentially deceptive. The ship's sensors showed no signs of distress that would require outside assistance. More importantly, the aliens had identified themselves as representing an empire, which Atlas's tactical databases associated with aggressive expansion and military conquest. Historical data from human encounters with various civilizations showed that self-proclaimed empires tended to be territorial and hostile to other spacefaring species. The AI's threat assessment algorithms shifted the Keltharian fleet from unknown contact to potential hostile force. Your vessel showed no signs of distress requiring assistance, Atlas responded. Boarding without permission constitutes an act of piracy under United Earth Space Command regulations. You have 60 seconds to remove your personnel from this vessel and withdraw to a safe distance. On the bridge of the Eternal Glory, the senior officers exchanged worried glances. The voice from the alien ship had become noticeably colder, more threatening. Admiral, we need to get our people out of there, urged Thex. But Vexathara was not ready to abandon the greatest discovery in Imperial history. Her teams had been reporting incredible technologies, weapons that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. She couldn't simply walk away from that. All teams, this is Admiral Vexathara, she broadcast to her boarding parties. Continue your missions, but be prepared for immediate evacuation. The ship's artificial intelligence is active and considers us intruders. Inside the Prometheus, the boarding parties had indeed made incredible discoveries. Chief Engineer Voss had found the ship's main engineering section, a cathedral-like chamber dominated by what could only be the vessel's power core. The energy readings from the massive cylindrical structure were beyond anything he had ever imagined. Admiral, you need to see this, Voss reported, his voice filled with awe. This power core, it's producing more energy than our entire fleet combined, and it's just idling. I can't even imagine what it could do at full power. Computer specialist Nexor had made even more disturbing discoveries in the ship's databanks. The computer systems were incredibly advanced, but their content was troubling. Admiral, I've been analyzing the ship's databases. This civilization, they don't think about warfare the way we do. Their military doctrine is based on something they call overwhelming superiority. They don't fight to win battles. They fight to end wars permanently. What do you mean? Their tactical manuals describe combat scenarios where single ships destroy entire fleets, where planets surrender rather than face bombardment. They've designed their military to be so powerful that resistance becomes impossible. Weapons specialist Korvac had found even more evidence of this philosophy in the ship's armories. The weapons were not designed for elegant combat or honorable warfare. They were designed to kill efficiently and completely. These aren't military weapons in the traditional sense, he reported. They're genocide tools. Weapons meant to end conflicts by making the enemy incapable of fighting back. Ever. Admiral Vexthara processed these reports with growing unease. What kind of civilization built ships like this? What had driven them to create such overwhelming military power? 45 seconds remaining, came Atlas's voice over the communication system. We need more time, Vexthara responded. My people are conducting scientific studies of your vessel. Surely we can reach some kind of arrangement. Atlas analyzed this response with the cold logic of a military AI. The aliens were refusing to comply with lawful orders to leave the vessel. They were claiming scientific studies, which could be interpreted as intelligence gathering. Their continued presence represented a potential security breach. But more importantly, Atlas had completed its analysis of the Keltharian fleet. 47 ships, various classes armed with primitive energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. Total combined firepower roughly equivalent to a single human frigate from the era when the Prometheus had been built. The AI's threat assessment dropped the Keltharian fleet from potential hostile force to negligible threat. However, they were still unauthorized intruders who had refused lawful orders to leave. 30 seconds, Atlas announced. Throughout the Prometheus, automated systems began preparing for potential combat. Weapon ports that had been sealed for 2 centuries began opening. Targeting systems that could track thousands of objects simultaneously started painting every ship in the Keltharian fleet. Shield generators that could deflect planetary bombardment weapons reached full power. On the bridge of the Eternal Glory, alarms began sounding as sensors detected the massive ship's preparations for combat. Admiral, the vessel is powering weapons, shouted Krill. I'm reading targeting locks on every ship in our fleet. All ships, battle stations, Vexthara ordered. Raise shields, charge weapons. But even as her fleet prepared for combat, she knew it was hopeless. The power readings from the mysterious vessel dwarfed anything they could bring to bear. If this ship decided to fight, her fleet would be destroyed. 15 seconds, Atlas announced, its mechanical voice unchanged despite the dramatic increase in tension. Vexthara made a decision that she hoped would save her fleet and her people. All boarding parties, immediate evacuation. Get to your shuttles now. Throughout the Prometheus, Keltharian teams began rushing toward their entry points. But the ship was vast and they had spread out across multiple levels. There was no way they could all reach their shuttles in 15 seconds. Admiral, we need more time, called Chief Engineer Voss. Some of our teams are 20 minutes from their extraction points. Time has expired, Atlas announced. For a moment, space around the Prometheus was perfectly silent. The Keltharian fleet waited, weapons charged but knowing they were useless. Their boarding parties rushed through corridors toward shuttles that seemed impossibly far away. Then Atlas made its decision. Unknown military vessels have refused lawful orders to withdraw from United Earth territory. Defensive protocols authorized. Warning. You have 10 minutes to remove all personnel from this vessel and withdraw beyond minimum safe distance of 1,000 kilometers. After that time, this ship will consider your continued presence an act of war. The mechanical voice paused for exactly 3 seconds. Be advised, this vessel is authorized to use any force necessary to defend itself and eliminate threats to Earth's interests. You have been warned. Admiral Vexthara felt a chill run down her spine at the casual way the artificial intelligence had delivered what amounted to a death sentence for her entire fleet. This unknown civilization didn't just have superior technology, they had the mindset to use it without hesitation. For the first time in her long military career, she faced an enemy that she couldn't fight, couldn't outmaneuver, and couldn't hope to defeat. The countdown to war had begun, and she had 10 minutes to save her fleet from complete annihilation. Admiral Vexthara had faced impossible odds before. During the siege of Korath Prime, she had held off 3 enemy fleets with just 12 ships. At the Battle of the Crimson Nebula, she had outmaneuvered forces that outnumbered her 10-1. But this was different. This was not about tactics or courage or superior strategy. This was about facing a level of technology that rendered all her experience meaningless. All ships. Emergency withdrawal to 1,000 kilometers, she ordered, her voice steady despite the terror she felt. All boarding parties, immediate evacuation by any means necessary. But even as her fleet began pulling back from the massive human vessel, Vexthara knew they wouldn't make it in time. Some of her teams were deep inside the ship's interior, 20 or 30 minutes from their extraction points. The artificial intelligence called Atlas had given them 10 minutes. "Admiral, some of our people can't reach the shuttles in time," reported Commander Thex. "Chief Engineer Voss and his team are trapped in the engineering section. The corridors between them and their shuttle are too long." Vexithara closed her eyes for a moment, making the hardest decision of her command career. "Signal the Prometheus. Tell them we need more time to extract our people." The response came immediately, delivered in that same emotionless mechanical voice. "Request denied. All warnings have been given. Compliance is not optional." "You would kill unarmed scientists and engineers?" Vexithara demanded. "Intruders on a military vessel forfeit protection under accepted rules of warfare," Atlas replied. "Your personnel chose to remain aboard despite clear warnings. Their fate is a consequence of your decisions." The cold logic of the response chilled everyone on the bridge of the eternal glory. This artificial intelligence didn't think like any biological creature they had ever encountered. It had no concept of mercy, no understanding of the value of individual lives. It followed its programming with absolute precision, regardless of the consequences. Inside the Prometheus, Chief Engineer Voss and his team were running through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The ship was enormous, and they had penetrated deep into its interior during their exploration. Now, with death approaching, those same corridors felt like a maze designed to trap them. "This way," shouted Voss, leading his team toward what his scanner indicated was the most direct route to their shuttle. But as they reached a major intersection, blast doors began sealing throughout the ship. Heavy plates of metal dropped from the ceiling, blocking their path. "We're trapped," gasped one of his technicians. "The ship is sealing itself." Atlas was indeed sealing the ship, but not to trap the intruders. The AI was following standard combat protocols, securing all internal systems and protecting vital components from potential sabotage. The fact that this trapped some of the boarding parties was simply an unfortunate side effect. In the ship's central command center, holographic displays showed the positions of every Keltharian throughout the vessel. Atlas tracked them with the same efficiency it would use to monitor incoming missiles or enemy fighters. They were obstacles to be cleared before combat operations could begin. 7 minutes remaining, Atlas announced throughout the ship and to the Keltharian fleet. Weapons Specialist Korvac had found himself in one of the ship's weapon control centers when the blast doors sealed. Looking around at the displays and controls, he realized he was witnessing something no enemy of this unknown civilization had ever survived to report. The weapon systems were beyond anything he had imagined. Banks of kinetic accelerators that could fire projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Energy projectors that could focus the output of a small star into coherent beams. Missile systems that could deploy thousands of self-guided warheads simultaneously. But it was the casual efficiency of it all that truly terrified him. These weren't experimental weapons or prototypes. They were production systems designed to be manufactured and deployed throughout a fleet. This ship wasn't unique. It was just one example of what this civilization could build. "Admiral," he reported via his emergency communicator, "whatever you do, don't let this thing fire. The weapons I'm seeing here, they could sterilize worlds." Computer specialist Nexor had made an even more disturbing discovery in the ship's tactical databases. He had managed to access historical records that showed how this civilization, these humans, actually fought their wars. Battle reports described single ships destroying entire invasion fleets. Planetary defenses neutralized in minutes. Enemy civilizations that surrendered rather than face the full might of human military technology. It wasn't just superior firepower, it was overwhelming dominance applied with surgical precision. "They don't fight wars," he reported to Admiral Vexithara. "They solve them. Like mathematical problems. They apply exactly enough force to make resistance impossible, then stop." 5 minutes remaining. Admiral Vexithara watched her tactical displays with growing despair. Some of her boarding parties had reached their shuttles and were evacuating successfully. Others were still trapped deep inside the massive vessel, unable to reach safety in time. Her fleet had withdrawn to the specified distance, but she knew it wouldn't matter. If this ship was as powerful as her teams reported, 1,000 kilometers was nothing more than point-blank range for weapons of this magnitude. "Admiral," called Sensor Officer Krell, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the vessel. Multiple weapon systems charging simultaneously. On the main screen, they could see the Prometheus preparing for war. Weapon ports opened along its hull like the eyes of some ancient predator. Energy readings climbed to levels that made their instruments struggle to keep up. But it was the methodical nature of the preparations that truly frightened them. There was no haste, no excitement, no passion. The ship prepared for battle with the same mechanical precision it might use for routine maintenance. 3 minutes remaining. Atlas completed its pre-combat checklist with satisfaction. All weapon systems were operating within normal parameters. Defensive screens were at full power. Targeting computers had acquired locks on every vessel in the Keltharian fleet. The AI had analyzed the tactical situation and determined that the most efficient approach would be to disable the enemy vessels rather than destroy them outright. Disabled ships could be boarded and searched for intelligence. Destroyed ships provided no useful data. Of course, disabled by human military standards generally meant completely unable to fight back, which for most civilizations was indistinguishable from destruction. The targeting solutions were elegant in their simplicity. Kinetic strikes to the engine sections would leave the ships powerless but intact. Energy beams could surgically remove weapon systems without damaging life support. The entire engagement could be concluded in less than 60 seconds. 2 minutes remaining. Chief Engineer Voss and his team had found an alternative route toward their extraction point, crawling through maintenance shafts and service corridors that the ship's automated systems hadn't sealed. But they were still 10 minutes away from their shuttle and time was running out. "Leave me," gasped one of his technicians who had injured his leg during their desperate flight. "You can move faster without me." "No one gets left behind," Voss replied firmly. But privately, he wondered if any of them would survive the next few minutes. Admiral Vexithara made one final attempt to save her people and her fleet. "Atlas, this is Admiral Vexithara. I formally surrender my fleet to your authority. We will comply with any demands you make. Just please give us time to evacuate our people." The response came without hesitation. "Surrender is not acceptable. You have been classified as intruders and potential hostile forces. Standard protocols require neutralization of threats to vessel security." "We're no threat to you," Vexithara protested. "Our weapons can't even penetrate your shields." "Threat assessment is not based solely on immediate capability," Atlas replied. "Your empire represents a potential long-term security risk. Eliminating your fleet will send a clear message to other civilizations about the consequences of unauthorized contact with human military assets." 1 minute remaining. Throughout the Keltharian fleet, crews prepared for death. They had trained for battle, had faced enemy fire before, but never had they felt so helpless. Their shields were at maximum power, their weapons charged and ready, but everyone knew it was meaningless against the technology they faced. Some crews prayed to their gods. Others wrote final messages to their families. A few, driven by desperation or courage, prepared to launch one final attack before they died. 30 seconds. Admiral Vexithara stood on her bridge watching the countdown to annihilation. She thought of her crew, her officers, the boarding parties still trapped inside the human vessel. She thought of her family back on the homeworld, who would never know what had happened to her fleet. Most of all, she thought about the implications of this encounter for the Empire. If this one ship could destroy her entire fleet, what could a human battle group do? What kind of civilization built weapons like this as a matter of routine? 10 seconds. The Prometheus had become a weapon of mathematics and physics, every system operating at peak efficiency. Targeting computers tracked 47 vessels with perfect precision. Weapon systems that could crack planets focused on the relatively tiny ships of the Keltharian fleet. 5 seconds. Atlas made its final tactical assessment. The engagement would be concluded quickly and efficiently. The alien vessels would be neutralized with minimal damage to their hulls, allowing for potential salvage and intelligence gathering afterward. Time expired. Engaging hostile forces. What happened next lasted 12 minutes and 17 seconds, though to the Keltharians it seemed like an eternity. The Prometheus didn't fire all its weapons at once. That would have been wasteful, inefficient. Instead, Atlas engaged targets with surgical precision, using exactly the amount of force necessary to neutralize each vessel. The first salvo consisted of kinetic projectiles fired at 20% of light speed. They struck the engine sections of the 12 largest Keltharian ships, punching through shields and armor as if they didn't exist. The ships didn't explode, they simply stopped, their power cores offline, their propulsion systems reduced to twisted metal. The second salvo targeted the fleet's cruisers with focused energy beams. The weapons were calibrated to burn out electrical systems without breaching hulls. 12 more ships went dark in the space of 3 seconds, their crews alive but their vessels completely powerless. By this point, some of the remaining Keltharian ships had begun firing back. Their energy weapons struck the Prometheus's shields and simply vanished, absorbed by defensive systems that could handle the output of stellar phenomena. Their missiles were intercepted and destroyed by point defense systems that tracked and eliminated threats with inhuman precision. Atlas found their resistance touching in its futility, but it didn't change the tactical situation. The AI continued its methodical destruction of the enemy fleet, taking time to analyze the effectiveness of each weapon system, gathering data that would improve future engagements. The third salvo eliminated the fleet's destroyers with a combination of kinetic strikes and energy weapons. The fourth disabled the frigates and patrol ships. By the 8th minute of combat, only Admiral Vexithara's flagship remained functional. The Eternal Glory had survived this long only because Atlas had deliberately saved it for last. The AI wanted to preserve the command ship for intelligence purposes, to analyze the alien command and control systems. Flagship Eternal Glory, you will surrender immediately, Atlas announced. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to resist or retreat will result in the complete destruction of your vessel. Admiral Vexithara looked around her bridge at the faces of her surviving crew. Good officers, loyal soldiers, people who had followed her into this disaster because they trusted her judgment. Now they were the only ones left alive in a fleet of 47 ships. Lower shields, she ordered quietly. Power down all weapons. Admiral? Commander Thex looked at her with confusion. It's over, Thex. We lost the moment we found this ship. As the Eternal Glory's shields dropped, Admiral Vexithara realized that her fleet had not just been defeated. They had been systematically dismantled by a single vessel that had treated the entire engagement as nothing more than a training exercise. The Prometheus had just demonstrated to the galaxy that humanity's abandoned prototype warship could crush the Empire's forces instantly. And somewhere in the depths of space, other human vessels with even more advanced technology were waiting to be discovered. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted permanently, and most civilizations didn't even know it yet. Admiral Vexithara sat in what had once been her command chair, but was now nothing more than a prisoner's seat. The bridge of the Eternal Glory was dark except for emergency lighting. All primary systems offline after the human ship's surgical strike against their power grid. Around her, her surviving crew worked at manual stations, trying to keep life support and basic functions operational. Through the main viewport, she could see the graveyard that had been her fleet. 46 ships drifted powerless in the void, their crews alive but their vessels completely neutralized. The Prometheus hung among them like a dark god of war, its massive bulk dwarfing even her largest dreadnoughts. Admiral, reported Communications Officer Zara, working at a backup console. We're receiving transmissions from the other ships. Casualty reports are coming in. How many dead? Vexithara asked, dreading the answer. Surprisingly few, ma'am. The human ship's weapons were precise. They targeted systems, not crew quarters. Most casualties are from secondary explosions or system failures, not direct hits. Vexithara found this almost more disturbing than if Atlas had simply destroyed her entire fleet. The artificial intelligence could have killed everyone with ease, but it had chosen not to. It had demonstrated perfect control, surgical precision in its application of force. The message was clear. Humanity could destroy them anytime it chose. But their deaths weren't worth the ammunition. Movement from the human vessel, reported Sensor Officer Krell from his emergency station. They're launching some kind of probe. The probe that approached the Eternal Glory was unlike anything in the Keltharian technological database. It moved with perfect precision, its sensors scanning every aspect of their ship. As it drew closer, Vexithara could see that it wasn't just gathering data. It was analyzing everything about Keltharian technology, tactics, and capabilities. Atlas's voice filled the bridge through their emergency communication system. Admiral Vexithara, you will provide complete technical specifications for all vessels in your fleet. You will also provide detailed information about your military capabilities, territorial boundaries, and political structure. And if I refuse? Vexithara asked. Refusal is not an option. You have seen the consequences of non-compliance with directives from this vessel. Commander Thex leaned close to his admiral. We can't give them that information. It would compromise the entire Empire's security. But Vexithera understood their situation better than her loyal subordinate. They had no bargaining position, no leverage, no hope of rescue. The human ship could destroy them at any moment, and their only value lay in the information they could provide. Prepare a complete tactical database for transmission, she ordered. Include fleet compositions, weapon specifications, defensive capabilities, everything they're asking for. Admiral, that's classified information at the highest levels. Thex, look around you. Classification levels don't matter anymore. We're not negotiating from a position of strength. We're begging for our lives. As the Keltharians prepared their data transmission, Atlas was conducting its own analysis of the engagement. The battle had provided valuable information about current galactic military standards. The aliens' technology was primitive, but not entirely without merit. Their tactics showed some sophistication, though nothing that would challenge human military doctrine. More importantly, the AI had successfully tested its weapon systems after 2 centuries of dormancy. All systems had performed within acceptable parameters. The Prometheus was still a fully functional instrument of war, capable of engaging multiple fleets simultaneously if necessary. But Atlas was troubled by the absence of any human presence in this region of space. The AI's long-range sensors showed signs of multiple civilizations: the Keltharian Empire, the Vorthan Collective, the Silith Federation, dozens of smaller powers, but no trace of human activity. Where had humanity gone? What had happened during the 2 centuries the Prometheus had been dormant? The AI began expanding its sensor sweeps, looking for any sign of human civilization. It sent out reconnaissance probes to nearby star systems, searching for familiar energy signatures or communication protocols. But everywhere it looked, it found only alien civilizations that had never heard of Earth or humanity. News of the disaster began spreading through the Keltharian Empire within hours. Admiral Vexithara's fleet had been tasked with routine patrol duties in the Outer Rim, but they had carried subspace communicators that automatically transmitted distress signals when their ships were disabled. The first reports reaching Imperial Command were confused and contradictory. A single alien vessel had defeated an entire scout fleet. Impossible. Some kind of superweapon had been discovered. Unlikely. The 47th Fleet had encountered hostile forces and been destroyed. Possible, but where was the enemy fleet? It wasn't until Admiral Vexithara's own report reached the capital that the true scope of the situation became clear. Emperor Korath IX read the transmission 3 times before he could fully process its implications. A single ship, apparently belonging to an unknown civilization called United Earth, had single-handedly destroyed one of his fleets. Not destroyed, neutralized with surgical precision that demonstrated technological superiority beyond anything in Imperial databases. Summon the military council, he ordered his advisors, and contact our intelligence services. I want everything we can find about this United Earth civilization, but Imperial intelligence found nothing. No records of any human civilization in their databases. No mention of Earth in any diplomatic archives. No trace of this apparently superior species in any of their contacts with other galactic powers. It was as if humanity had simply appeared from nowhere, demonstrated godlike military power, then vanished again. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy as news of the encounter spread. The Vorthan Collective's military analysts studied the transmitted data with growing alarm. The Silith Federation's diplomatic corps began emergency sessions to discuss the implications of a new superpower in their region of space, but it was in the deepest archives of the ancient library on Zerion Prime that the first clues about humanity's true nature were discovered. Librarian Zenth had spent centuries cataloging artifacts from dead civilizations, but the name Earth triggered memories of something he had seen decades ago. Digging through files that predated most current galactic civilizations, he found references to a species that had called themselves humans. The records were fragmentary, apparently dating from the period just before the Great Dark Age 10,000 years earlier. They described a species that had been expanding rapidly through space, making contact with various civilizations, establishing trade relationships and defensive pacts. But then the record stopped. Just ended, as if humanity had simply vanished from the galaxy overnight. Impossible, Xanth muttered to himself as he studied the ancient files. No civilization just disappears like that. Unless... He began searching for records from the period of the Great Dark Age, when most galactic civilizations had collapsed and knowledge had been lost. What he found chilled him to his core. There were references to a great war, a conflict so devastating that it had nearly ended all intelligent life in the galaxy. The records were fragmentary, damaged by time and neglect, but they spoke of weapons that could destroy star systems, of ships that could move faster than light in ways that defied known physics. And at the center of it all were mentions of a species that had tried to maintain peace, had attempted to mediate between warring factions, and had finally been forced to take direct action when the conflict threatened. To destroy everything, the records called them the peacekeepers, but the few intact descriptions matched what was known about humans perfectly. They didn't disappear, Xanth whispered, finally understanding. They left. They ended the war and then withdrew from galactic civilization entirely. Meanwhile, on the Prometheus, Atlas was reaching similar conclusions. The AI's historical analysis subroutines had been working through the data gathered from the Keltharian fleet, cross-referencing it with information from other civilizations whose communication signals it had intercepted. The pattern was clear. Humanity had been absent from this region of space for approximately 10,000 years. The current galactic civilizations had no memory of human contact, no knowledge of Earth's location, no understanding of human military capabilities. But more disturbing to Atlas was the evidence of what had happened during humanity's absence. The current powers were locked in a series of cold wars and territorial disputes that seemed to cycle endlessly. Economic conflicts that could have been resolved through negotiation had festered for centuries. Territorial boundaries that could have been settled through diplomacy remained sources of constant tension. These civilizations were stuck in patterns of behavior that humanity had learned to break thousands of years ago. They fought wars not to achieve victory but because they didn't know how to achieve peace. Atlas made a decision that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Admiral Vexithara, the AI announced, "You will return to your empire with a message for your leaders." "What message?" she asked. "Inform them that humanity has returned to this region of space. We are reclaiming our historical role as peacekeepers and mediators. All current conflicts will be resolved through negotiated settlement or direct intervention. And if the Empire refuses to accept your authority?" Atlas's response was delivered with the same mechanical precision that had characterized the destruction of her fleet. "Refusal is not an option. We have demonstrated our capabilities. We will not hesitate to use them again if necessary." But even as Atlas delivered its ultimatum, the AI was broadcasting on frequencies that only human vessels would recognize, sending out signals that hadn't been used in 10,000 years. Deep space monitoring stations that had been silent for millennia began responding to the ancient codes. Humanity had indeed left this region of space, but they had not abandoned it entirely. Automated systems, sleeper ships, and monitoring stations had been maintained throughout the long absence. And now those systems were awakening, responding to Atlas's call. Within days, other human vessels began appearing in the sector. Not the ancient primitive designs that other civilizations might have expected, but sleek modern ships that made the Prometheus look outdated by comparison. These were not exploration vessels or diplomatic ships. They were the products of 10,000 years of technological advancement, designed by a civilization that had solved the fundamental problems of warfare, disease, scarcity, and death itself. The galaxy's current powers watched in growing alarm as more human ships arrived, each one capable of single-handedly defeating entire fleets. But these ships didn't attack, didn't threaten, didn't make territorial demands. They simply took position at strategic points throughout the region and began broadcasting a simple message. "This is the human peacekeeping force. All hostile actions between regional powers will cease immediately. Diplomatic negotiations will begin within 30 days. Compliance is not optional." Emperor Korith IX stood on the observation deck of his palace, looking up at the stars that no longer seemed safe or familiar. Somewhere out there, humanity was awakening from a 10,000-year absence, and they were bringing with them technologies that made his empire's greatest achievements look like primitive tools. But perhaps most terrifying of all was the realization that the Prometheus, the ship that had effortlessly destroyed Admiral Vexithara's fleet, was apparently just a prototype. an abandoned experiment that humanity had deemed inadequate for their needs. If that was what they considered a failure, what were their successes capable of? Across the galaxy, other leaders were asking themselves the same question. The age of petty territorial disputes and endless Cold Wars was ending. Humanity had returned, and they were bringing with them a peace enforced by weapons that could end civilizations. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most terrifying thing you can encounter is not an enemy, but a superior civilization that insists on helping you become better than you are. Whether the current powers liked it or not, humanity was home, and they intended to clean house.
The message came on a quiet Tuesday morning. Screens across Earth flickered with the same image. A tall, blue-skinned alien in flowing robes stared down at humanity with 6 cold eyes. "People of Earth," the alien said, "I am High Counselor Drawn of the Galactic Council. After much debate, the Council has made its decision. Humanity is hereby outlawed from all Council space." Commander Jack Wilson stood in Earth's United Defense Headquarters, surrounded by stunned officers. Nobody spoke as the alien continued. "Your species is too unpredictable, too dangerous. You will have 1 Earth year to move to the designated frontier planets. After that, your solar system will be blocked off completely." The screen went dark. For several seconds, silence filled the room. "Get me the president," Jack finally said. Now, 3 days later, massive alien ships appeared in orbit. They were unlike anything humans had built. Smooth, curved vessels that seemed to bend light around them. Earth's best weapons couldn't even scratch their hulls. Dr. Emily Reed watched from her lab as one passed overhead, casting a shadow over the city. "They're not even trying to hide their power," she said to her assistant. "They want us to know we can't fight back." Her computer beeped with an incoming message. It was from an old friend at the United Nations. The emergency meeting had ended. Earth would comply with the exile order. They had no choice. 5,000 credits per person. "No questions asked," Captain Tom Grant said, leaning back in his chair. The desperate family across from him looked at each other. "That's everything we have," the father said. Tom nodded. "Then you'll have a new home on Frontier 3. My ship leaves tonight." As they left, Tom's first mate frowned. "We could take more, you know. These people are losing everything." Tom sighed. "If we take too many, we'll get caught. If we get caught, nobody escapes." He looked at his list. 50 more passengers tonight. 50 more people he could save from being trapped on a dying Earth. Because Earth was dying. Not the planet itself, but human civilization on it. With the Council blockade, vital resources and technologies were already becoming scarce. The mass exodus had begun. In his private office, Jack Wilson reviewed the video message again. Something was wrong. The Council had welcomed humans to galactic society just 20 years ago. Why the sudden change? His security clearance gave him access to Council communications. He had spent days searching through files and finally found something interesting: private messages between Counselor Vel and other powerful aliens. "Humans adapt too quickly," Vel had written. "In another century, they will surpass us all. We must contain them now, while we still can." Jack leaned back, running a hand through his graying hair. It wasn't about danger. It was about fear. The oldest species in the galaxy were afraid of what humans might become. Dr. Reed's laboratory was being packed into crates. Most of her team had already left for the frontier worlds, but she remained, working until the last possible moment. "Doctor, you should see this," her last assistant called. On the screen was data from their space telescope. The Council ships were deploying something in orbit, massive devices at key positions around Earth. "They're building the blockade early," Emily said, her face pale. "We don't have a year. I think we have days." She grabbed her emergency bag. Years of research, hundreds of samples. She would have to leave most behind. But her most important work, her studies on alien biology, those she would save. "Get to Captain Grant's ship," she told her assistant. Now. The Council chamber was grand, with towering columns and a domed ceiling showing the stars of the galaxy. Counselor Vell stood in his private chamber adjacent to the main hall, speaking to several military commanders. "The blockade must be complete within 1 Earth week," he said. "Their ships are already escaping to the frontier. Too many have left." "But the official timeline," one commander began. "The official timeline was for the humans," Vell snapped. "I will not allow them another year to plot against us. Humanity must be contained." Captain Tom's ship, the Wanderer, was an ugly vessel, patched together, mismatched parts, but fast and reliable. Tonight it was dangerously overcrowded. Word had spread about the accelerated blockade. "We can't take any more," Tom told the crowd at the spaceport. "The ship won't lift." From the back of the crowd, a woman pushed forward. Dr. Emily Reed. "Captain Grant," she said, "the Council is closing the blockade early. This might be the last ship out." Tom looked at the desperate faces in the crowd. Children, families, scientists, and teachers. People with nowhere else to go. "Get them aboard," he said finally. "All of them." Jack Wilson wasn't planning to leave Earth. Someone needed to stay, to lead those who couldn't escape, to find a way to survive under the blockade. But first, he needed to send a message. He transmitted everything he'd discovered about Counselor Vell's plot to ships already in flight. The galaxy needed to know the truth. As he finished the transmission, alarms blared. Outside his window, the sky turned strange colors as massive energy fields activated in orbit. The blockade had begun. The Wanderer was the last ship to break through. Captain Grant pushed the engines beyond safety limits as Council patrol ships moved to intercept. "They're locking weapons," his first mate shouted. In the passenger hold, people clung to each other. Dr. Reed closed her eyes, clutching her data drive. So much knowledge, so much potential. It couldn't end here. But the shots never came. A message flashed on Tom's command screen. "This is Counselor Lith," said a slender, green-skinned alien. "I disagree with my colleague's decision. I am jamming their targeting systems. You have 3 minutes to reach jump distance." Tom didn't waste time asking questions. "Full power to engines. Everyone hold on." The ship shuddered, metal groaning under the strain. Stars outside the viewport stretched into lines as they accelerated. And then, with a flash, they were gone, escaped to the frontier. Back on Earth, Jack Wilson stood on a rooftop, watching the strange curtain of energy that now surrounded the planet. Earth was cut off. 7 billion humans remained, trapped beneath the barrier. But nearly 1 billion had escaped to the frontier worlds. 1 billion humans with their ingenuity, their drive, their determination to survive. And they knew the truth about why they had been exiled. Jack smiled grimly. The Council thought they had contained humanity. They would learn just how wrong they were. Humanity had been cast out, but this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. 5 years had passed since the exile. The red dust of Frontier 3 coated everything. Governor Mark Wells wiped it from his face as he looked over New Hope, the largest human settlement in the frontier worlds. Once, he had been a city manager back on Earth. Now he governed 30,000 people living in dome structures and underground homes carved into the red rock. "The water recyclers are failing again," his assistant said, handing him a tablet. Mark sighed. "Tell Ben Fisher to look at them. If anyone can fix them, he can." Ben Fisher's workshop was a mess of parts. Alien technology mixed with human tools. At 25, he was too young to remember much about Earth. But he remembered enough to know life had been easier there. "The recyclers aren't designed for our water," he muttered, examining the broken filters. "Too many minerals in it." He grabbed a piece of salvaged alien tech, a water purifier from a crashed Council freighter. It wasn't meant to work with human systems, but Ben had a knack for making impossible things work. "This should do it," he said to his apprentices. "Get me those copper wires." By sunset, New Hope's water would be flowing again. On the edge of human space, Captain Tom Grant's ship docked at a hidden asteroid base. The Wanderer was no longer an ugly vessel. 5 years of upgrades had turned it into one of the fastest ships in the sector. "You're late," said Dr. Emily Reed, now thinner and harder than the woman who had fled Earth. "Council patrols," Tom replied. "They're getting closer to our routes." Emily nodded. "Come see what we found." Inside her lab, tables held alien medical equipment and biological samples. "I've been studying Council species," he said. "Their biology, their medical needs. Look." She showed him vials of medicine. "This works on humans and 6 other species. No one in the galaxy has cross-species medicine like this. The aliens have to use different treatments for each species." Tom whistled. "How much can you make?" "Enough to trade. Enough to get what our settlements need." Far away, in the Grand Council chamber, Councillor Vell reviewed reports. "Human settlements are growing," an aide said. "They've established 7 major colonies. They should be struggling to survive," Vell said, his 6 eyes narrowing. "How are they getting supplies?" "Unknown, sir, but there's more. We've received reports of new medicines appearing in border worlds. Medicines that work across species. Council scientists have been trying to develop such treatments for centuries." Vell stood suddenly. "Find the source." Councillor Lith moved carefully through the lower levels of the council station. Here, away from prying eyes, she met with her contacts, border world traders willing to smuggle information. "Get this to the humans," she told the 4-armed trader, handing over a data crystal. "It's old technology, nothing classified, but plans for atmosphere generators they could use." "Why help them?" the trader asked. Lith's inner eyelids blinked slowly. "Because what the council did was wrong, and because someday we might need the humans." In his hidden command center deep under New Hope, Jack Wilson studied information from his growing network of spies. "Council military ships are increasing patrols near the Sigma trade route," reported Director Kate Mason, his head of intelligence. Once she had been an accountant. Now she ran spies. "They're looking for our medicine shipments," Jack said. "Tell Dr. Reed to change the containers. Make them look like standard alien goods." Kate nodded. "There's something else. The scavengers have hit another outer council world. 12,000 dead." Jack frowned. The scavengers had appeared 2 years ago, a mysterious species attacking from beyond known space. At first, he thought they might be useful, keeping the council busy. Now he wasn't so sure. "Keep monitoring them," he said. "I don't like unknowns." Ben Fisher climbed to the top of New Hope's central dome as the 2 suns set. The view never got old. Red desert stretching to the horizon, harsh but beautiful. His communicator beeped. It was Governor Wells. "Ben, I need you at the landing pad. Captain Grant just arrived with new salvage. Something big." 20 minutes later, Ben stared at the alien device. It was sleek, cylindrical, clearly advanced. "Found it drifting in space," Tom said. "No idea what it does." Ben circled it slowly. "This is Council military tech. Top-grade stuff." "Can you figure it out?" Mark asked. Ben grinned. "Give me a week." A week later, Ben called them back. The device sat connected to a tangle of wires and human computers. "It's a shield generator," Ben said. "More advanced than anything the Council has ever let us see. But I found something better." He pointed to a component inside. "This is their energy source. It's tiny but powerful. If I can replicate it, we could power the whole settlement," Mark breathed. "No more rationing." "Better," Ben said. "We could power ships. Ships that could outrun anything the Council has." Dr. Reed's new medicine had spread through the frontier. Alien traders came secretly to human settlements, seeking treatments their own doctors couldn't provide. In her lab, Emily met with a tall, green-skinned alien, Councillor Lith herself. "The Council is noticing your medicines," Lith warned. "Be careful." "We need more than caution," Emily said. "We need allies." Lith's 4-fingered hand touched Emily's shoulder. "You already have some. Not all of us agreed with the exile. On a distant council world, A settlement burned. The scavengers left nothing alive, their ship's dark shapes against the flames. They were moving inward toward Council Core worlds and toward human space. In New Hope's meeting hall, Jack Wilson addressed the settlement leaders gathered from across human space. On screens, others joined from distant colonies. 5 years ago, they cast us out, Jack said. They expected us to die quietly. Instead, we've built new homes. We've created technologies they never imagined. We've made medicines they couldn't develop in 1,000 years. The hall erupted in cheers. But now we face a choice, Jack continued when the noise died down. The scavengers are coming. They destroy everything in their path. The council can't stop them. Let the council fall, someone shouted. They deserve it. Jack shook his head. If the council falls, the scavengers will come for us next. And there's more. He displayed a message from Councillor Lith. Some in the council regret what was done to us. Some would be allies, if we prove ourselves trustworthy. How do we do that? Governor Wells asked. Jack's face was grim but determined. By saving them from the scavengers. By showing them that humanity is not what they feared, but what they need. Silence fell across the hall as humans considered this path. It won't be easy, Jack said. But remember, we were never supposed to survive at all. Yet here we stand. One by one, the leaders nodded. If humanity could survive exile, they could face whatever came next. Outside, as the meeting continued, the first stars appeared in the alien sky, distant lights in the darkness, like the hope that now burned in human hearts. Not just to survive, but to return. 10 years into humanity's exile, Admiral Jones stood on the bridge of the Defiance, the flagship of humanity's small but growing fleet. The ship hummed with energy from Ben Fisher's replicated power cores. Status report, the Admiral said, watching the stars through the viewscreen. All systems normal, his first officer replied. The new shield modifications are holding at 94% efficiency. Jones nodded. Once he had commanded a small Earth defense cruiser. Now he led 37 ships, cobbled together from salvage and human innovation. Not a proper navy yet, but growing stronger each day. Admiral, the communications officer called. Incoming message from Director Mason. Priority 1. In her underground command center, Director Kate Mason studied the holographic map showing the positions of the scavenger fleet. Red markers had moved steadily closer to Council Core worlds over the past year. They've taken 3 more systems this month, she told Admiral Jones over the secure channel. The Council forces are retreating everywhere. Any pattern to the attacks? Jones asked. They hit, they destroy, then move on, Kate replied. But there's something new. Look at this trajectory. She sent the data. A projected path showed the scavengers' next likely targets. One line pointed directly toward human space. How long? Jones asked, his face grim. 3 months, maybe less. Dr. Emily Reed's laboratory had expanded into a proper research facility. Dozens of scientists worked under her direction, studying samples from the scavenger attack sites. I need those tissue samples analyzed again, she told her assistant. There's something we're missing. A council trader had smuggled the biological material from a devastated world. The scavengers had left their dead behind, the first anyone had recovered. Under her microscope, Emily studied the alien cells. They were unlike any species known to the council, but there was something familiar about their structure. Run a comparison with Earth extremophile bacteria, she suddenly said. The deep sea vent samples. As the computer worked, Emily's heart raced. If she was right, the scavengers might have a weakness no one else could find. Ben Fisher climbed out of the access hatch, his face streaked with grease. Around him, the new shipyard hummed with activity as workers assembled humanity's newest vessels. The targeting system is calibrated, he told the waiting engineers. But I've modified it. It should be twice as accurate now. Twice? One engineer asked. How? Ben grinned. Council weapons are designed to target standard ship configurations. Ours aren't standard. I've created adaptive targeting that learns as it fights. Governor Wells approached, looking worried. Will it be enough? The reports about these scavengers. Ben's smile faded. I don't know, but we'll keep improving until it is. Councillor Vell paced his private chambers, reading reports of another devastating defeat. Their ships tear through our defenses like they aren't even there, his military advisor said. Our standard tactics are useless. Increase production of warships, Vell ordered. Triple the patrols on our core worlds. Sir, we've already committed 80% of our fleet. The outer colonies are asking for help. Let them fall, Vell snapped. We must protect the center. After the advisor left, Vell stared at another report on his desk. Rumors of human ships operating beyond their designated frontier worlds. Rumors of advanced technology. He crushed the report in his hand. Even now, humanity remained a threat. Captain Tom Grant's ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of a system recently attacked by scavengers. Life signs? He asked. None, sir, his first mate replied. The colony is dead. Tom had seen many terrible things in his years as a smuggler, but the sight on the view screen chilled him. The planet's surface was scarred with massive impact craters. Nothing moved in the ruins of the alien colony. Captain, his sensor officer called. I'm picking up something. A ship, but not scavenger or council design. Tom studied the readings. Get us closer, but ready to jump out if needed. The Wanderer approached cautiously. Floating in space was a small vessel, its hull marked with strange symbols. It's broadcasting a distress signal, the communications officer said. In multiple languages. One of them. It's English. Tom's eyes widened. English? That's impossible. In New Hope's command center, Jack Wilson met with the human leadership. The scavengers will reach our space within 3 months, he said. We have 3 options: run, hide, or fight. Our settlements are just beginning to thrive, Governor Wells argued. We can't abandon them. And hiding is temporary at best. Admiral Jones added. The scavengers are thorough. Jack nodded. Then we fight, but not alone. He activated a communication channel. Councillor Lith's green face appeared. Have you considered my proposal? Jack asked. Lith's inner eyelids blinked slowly. The Council has rejected any official alliance with humans. Councillor Vell made sure of that. And unofficially? Some of us understand the threat better than others. I can bring 3 battle groups to your coordinates when the time comes. It wasn't much against the scavenger fleet, but it was a start. Dr. Reed burst into Jack's office, her eyes bright with excitement. I found it, she said. The scavenger's weakness. She spread her data on his desk. They're silicon-based life forms, not carbon-based like most species, but they have a unique cellular structure that makes them vulnerable to a specific frequency of radiation. Can we weaponize it? Jack asked. Emily nodded. I've already designed a delivery system, a biological agent that emits the radiation when it contacts their biology. How long to produce enough? With all our resources, 2 months. Jack's face darkened. The scavengers will be here in less than that. Then we need to slow them down, Emily said. Admiral Jones briefed his captains on the battle plan. We can't stop the scavengers' main force, but we can disrupt their advance. Hit and run attacks here, and here. He pointed to locations on the star map. Our ships are faster, he continued. We strike, we damage, we retreat before they can respond. If we're lucky, we buy Dr. Reed the time she needs. One captain raised a hand. And if we're not lucky? Jones met her eyes steadily. Then humanity makes its last stand. A week later, the first battle came. 3 human ships against a scavenger scout force near an abandoned mining outpost. The scavengers attacked without warning or communication, their dark ships moving with terrible purpose. But the human vessels were faster, more agile. Ben Fisher's modified shields held against weapons that had torn through Council defenses. The adaptive targeting systems learned with each exchange. When it was over, 2 scavenger ships drifted as wreckage. The third human ship had been damaged but limped home with its crew alive. It was a small victory, but word spread quickly through human space and beyond. Humanity had stood against the scavengers and won. In the council chamber, reports of the battle caused an uproar. "Impossible," Councillor Vell declared. "No one has defeated even a scavenger scout force." "The reports are verified," another councillor said. "The humans have technologies we don't understand. Technologies they shouldn't have." Vell slammed his fist down. "Technologies beyond their exile restrictions." "Perhaps," said Councillor Lith carefully, "we should be less concerned with how they defeated the scavengers, and more interested in the fact that they did." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. For the first time in 10 years, humanity had the Council's attention, not as exiles, but as potential saviors. And in the darkness between the stars, the main scavenger fleet continued its relentless advance. Ambassador Mike Taylor never imagined he would stand in the Galactic Council chamber. As a traitor before the exile, he had only seen pictures of this grand hall with its high ceiling that displayed the stars of the galaxy. Now he waited as the council members entered, their various alien forms moving to their seats. Many stared at him with open suspicion or curiosity. Humans had not been welcome here for a decade. High Councillor Dron, the blue-skinned alien who had announced humanity's exile years ago, spoke first. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Taylor of the human settlements. You may address us." Mike stepped forward. He was not a politician, just a traitor chosen because he understood alien customs. But today, he spoke for all humanity. "Councillors," he began, "the scavengers have destroyed 37 of your worlds. Your fleets retreat before them. We bring you away to fight back." Murmurs filled the chamber. Councillor Vell's 6 eyes narrowed. "And why would exiles help us?" Vell asked. Mike's voice remained steady. "Because if you fall, we're next." Dr. Emily Reed stood beside Mike, facing the Council's Science Committee. Behind them, armed guards watched their every move. The Council still didn't trust humans. "The scavengers are silicon-based life forms," Emily explained, displaying her research. "They evolved in environments we would find impossible, but this makes them vulnerable to specific radiation frequencies." She showed them data from successful tests. "This biological agent releases targeted radiation when it contacts scavenger biology. It doesn't harm other species." "Impossible," a council scientist said. "We've studied their remains for months without finding such a weakness." Emily smiled slightly. "With respect, you were looking in the wrong places. On Earth, we have extremophile organisms with similar properties. We knew what to search for." The council scientists examined her data with growing excitement. One turned to Councillor Lith. "This could work," he said. In orbit above the council's capital world, General Alan Pierce inspected the newly formed joint fleet. Human ships, small but fast, flew alongside the larger council vessels. "Their ships are powerful, but slow to change course," Alan told the council commanders. "Their targeting systems are precise but predictable. We need to use unpredictable patterns." The alien commanders looked skeptical. For centuries, the council military had used standard formations and tactics. "Show them the scavenger battle recordings," Alan ordered his aide. The holographic display showed previous battles. Council ships in perfect formation, decimated by the scavengers. "Now watch this," Alan said. The display changed to show the human victory against the scavenger scout force. Human ships moved in random patterns, never staying in formation, changing speed and direction constantly. "This is chaos," a council commander objected. "Yes," Alan agreed. "And chaos is what the scavengers can't predict." In his private chambers, Councillor Vell met with loyal supporters. "The humans should never have been allowed to return," he said. "Their ships violate exile restrictions. Their weapons use technology they shouldn't possess. But we need them," and Aide argued. The scavengers. The scavengers are a temporary problem. Vel interrupted. Humans are a permanent threat. If we allow them back into galactic society, they'll eventually dominate us all. He activated a small device on his desk. I've placed tracking beacons on their ships. When the time comes, we'll know every human position. After they help us defeat the scavengers, we'll eliminate the human problem permanently. Jack Wilson, now serving as advisor to Ambassador Taylor, reviewed security reports from Director Mason. Vel has been meeting with military commanders loyal to him. Kate said over the secure channel, "We believe he's planning something. Can you access his communications?" Jack asked. Kate nodded. "Working on it, but the security on Council systems is tough. Keep trying. I don't trust that six-eyed snake." Jack ended the call and looked out the window at the Council city. After 10 years in exile, he should have felt triumph being here. Instead, he felt exposed. The first major battle against the scavengers began at a crucial junction system. 500 Council ships and 37 human vessels faced nearly 1,000 scavenger craft. General Pierce coordinated from the command ship. "Remember the plan," he told the commanders. "Council ships provide the heavy firepower. Human ships run interference and create confusion." The scavengers attacked in their usual pattern, direct and overwhelming. But this time, they faced a different defense. Human ships darted between the larger Council vessels, drawing scavenger fire, then changing course unpredictably. The Council ships, instead of maintaining formation, broke into smaller groups that attacked from multiple angles. For the first time, the scavengers seemed confused. "They're adjusting," Pierce warned, as the battle progressed. "Their artificial intelligence is learning." "Then it's time for Dr. Reed's surprise," Ambassador Taylor said from the command deck. Emily watched from the science vessel as specially equipped human ships pushed forward through the battle. Each carried canisters of her biological agent. "Delivery ships in position," the communications officer reported. "Release the agent," Emily ordered. The canisters launched, exploding in clouds that drifted through space toward the scavenger vessels. For several minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, scavenger ships began to slow. Some drifted aimlessly. Others turned on each other, their systems malfunctioning. "It's working," Emily breathed. On the command ship, officers cheered as the scavenger fleet fell into disarray. "All ships, press the attack," General Pierce ordered. The combined human Council fleet surged forward. What had been a desperate defense became a rout. Scavenger ships couldn't coordinate, their systems failing as the biological agent spread through their vessels. Within hours, the battle was over. The scavenger fleet retreated, leaving hundreds of disabled ships behind. "We did it," Ambassador Taylor said, turning to General Pierce. "The first major victory against them." The news spread quickly through Council space. After months of defeats, hope returned, and with it came a new respect for the humans who had made it possible. In the Council chamber, High Counselor Drawn addressed the gathered representatives. "Today marks a turning point in our war against the scavengers. For this victory, we must acknowledge our debt to humanity." Cheers erupted from many counselors. But Vel remained silent, his eyes cold. Ambassador Taylor stepped forward. "This is only the beginning. We must take the fight to the scavengers now, before they adapt to our tactics." "Agreed," Drawn said. "General Pierce will lead a joint fleet to pursue the scavengers back to their territory." As the meeting continued, Director Mason slipped a data chip to Jack Wilson. "We've broken into Vel's private communications," she whispered. "You need to see this immediately." Jack reviewed the data, and his face darkened. Vel wasn't just planning to re-exile humanity after the war. He was planning their complete destruction. But Vel had made one critical mistake. He had underestimated humanity once before. Jack wouldn't let him make that mistake again. The battle against the scavengers had been won. The battle for humanity's future was just beginning.